A big hangout, everybody out there. And welcome back. Yes, welcome back. It's a wonderful day, August 4th, 2026. Interesting developments this morning. Got to see a first-hand pump on the old HEX. So the title here, going after this today, is HEX Day 2437. And it looks like, question mark, a recovery in place or beginning. Or over. I don't know. Watch and see. I always have to watch these things to see how far it goes, but we did see HEX pop a good 11-12% today this morning. Last several days kind of reminded everybody the markets do what they got to do. They don't move in a straight line. HEX experienced a pretty sharp pullback after pushing above the 350-day with a wick, but then it came back down. And it had been sitting above the 111-day moving average. We'll take a look at that. But what's notable here isn't just the price correction, but what continues to happen, underneath the surface. Very hard to get HEX. I know we keep saying that, but all you have to do is go to one of the aggregators and just go look at the number of hops and where the primary liquidity is coming from. Looks like it's coming from V3 when you're doing a trade this morning, but also seeing it tied up with PulseX quite a bit. Meanwhile, the bond market continues to expand. Providers are continuing to deploy capital. New HTTs are being minted. Actuator deposits are going up. So the infrastructure keeps growing, despite the short-term volatility, and that's a good thing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to watch and see. Let's see what we got here. See no comments, so let's go ahead and move on to the chart. Let's go see what the chart looks like. So seeing some relative strength here today on the HEX chart on Pulse Chain, up almost 13% at this point. So you can see where we had wicked up above this 350-day moving average, and then we've come down, and now we've reclaimed the 002 level. Meanwhile, we're seeing a little bit of leading edge here on the old EX up at 0.001130, above its 350-day moving average. This looks like a complete setup. I don't know if anybody else has been seeing the news on this, but a lot of news coming out about a potential Bitcoin pump in the near future, Ethereum pump in the near future. See Ethereum just chilling below its 111-day moving average. It looks like it's accumulating now. Same thing with Bitcoin. And so is this a pre-positioning of the Pulse Chain, to take advantage of that pump? Perhaps it is. But it's looking pretty good price-wise. Let's go take a look at a different chart. We'll look at the HEX chart itself. This is on the 1 hour, and you can see we're kind of like milling about down here at the 18 level for the last day or so. And then this morning, all of a sudden, whoop, up it went. Took the elevator up above 2.0. I'll put it on 5 minute just to give us a little different view of this. So things were going pretty steady, and then a bunch of volume came in. Boop, 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 boop. It looks like on the 6 hour, on this pair, which is the HEX Pulse pair, we had 37,000 in volume, 22K in buy and 15 in sell. So the difference is very tiny. It's only 7K. Now, what I also find pretty interesting as I watch this is that the overall liquidity, even the price is going up, we're not seeing, tremendous amounts of liquidity added to the primary pairs. I have to do some more research on that, but that kind of infers to me that perhaps people are pulling liquidity. So in dollar value, when it goes up, it's pretty close, but maybe not as many units, which just again makes things even more volatile, Moonbutt, if you know what I'm saying. If you know what I'm saying. So we saw HEX stabilize after the bump. Now it's retraced back up to 2 zeros and a 2. This is not unusual, right? This is pretty normal. Important observations here is that the market is above and respects the trend line that's been developing since June. Right, and price continues to trade above the 111-day moving average, which is good. Dips are in the game, so just like we just saw a dip, we could see a 50% dip. That's pretty normal in crypto world. It's really zooming out to look at looking at the numbers at a much higher level. Volatility's kind of cooled off though last few days. If you don't talk about this morning, now this might have been a single person or a few people taking position this morning. I don't know. I don't really wallet track to really track all that stuff, but we did get a pretty strong impulse of buying, and we don't see a lot of panic selling. The chart looks more like a consolidation after a big move. So yeah, healthy markets breathe. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And so again, overall structure tends to remain constructive. That's what it looks like to me. Higher lows continue to develop. We're seeing okay volume. I think I'd like to see more volume, but hey, this is kind of like kindling, right? Kindling. You can even see the charts moving because I have it on the 5-minute here, right? So it's even moving up a little bit now. These aren't like crazy volumes. $100 in volume in the last 5 minutes isn't like insane. Last hour, 4K total. But what I would continue to point out to people is just how this moves, percentage wise, with very little volume. And even though it kind of looks like, hey, these are big volume bars over here at the bottom, go out to the day. And then maybe let's go all the way to week. Let's do that because it's better to zoom out. You can see that this volume is like nothing compared to volume that we've seen in the past on the weeklies, where we might have been seeing, 20 million, 40 million, 30 million in volume back in 24. Even when Pulse Chain had first launched, we were seeing 40, 29, 12 million in a day, right? So yeah, one of the things we would want to see is there to be much more volume, 500,000 in volume. While it's good, I think it's good. It's not a tremendously high number, And so part of this is about inspiring the market, but the market maker, and I know I've covered this a bunch of times, but if you consider these to be tests of the market, we go back out on the daily a little bit and spread this out. Go back to June. If you consider this to be a test of the market, in early June, it came down to higher low, another test to a higher low, another test in July, higher low. Here's another test. If this is the low, it's certainly a higher low, right? And so the structure remains in place. It remains in place. And so it's pretty exciting to kind of watch that. And, listen, I'm just like everybody else, right? So I'm like, green candles feel good. that's the best thing. Anyways, so yeah. So I guess with the kindling part of this is that when people begin to say, hey, I need to get my position back in HEX, they begin to fuel the upward motion. Market maker will continue to watch that, wants to see that people aren't going to be dumping the price down. Otherwise, they'll let it consolidate for a while. And so we're seeing that again. Let's switch over to the bond market. This is the long end of the bond market. Let me do an update. We'll go to the front end. I do take a feed from Deck Screener for this, so it's a very convenient way to pull the information, but sometimes a little laggy. So we can see the front end is continuing to build out. You see a lot of the prices, well, all of them are in the green on the day because what? They're priced in HEX, right? So that's why they're priced in HEX, and that's what you see with that because they are priced in HEX. So what's pretty encouraging watching this, and those of you who've been listening to me for a while, you know I wasn't really sold on this whole idea of the front end being a thing. But you know, some people consider it to be, it's not a loan. It's not technically a loan, but people have access to their liquidity. You know, and so somebody even pushed the idea a while back about this operating like a HEX equity line of credit, a HELOC, where you have your HEX in there and you're able to take short-term loans out to maturities, even though like I said, it's not really a loan. You're minting future HEX, but you're able to get that future HEX and then do things with it while you're waiting for the stake to mature, which is kind of an interesting concept. And it's completely opposite of what I usually am thinking about, which is getting more T-shares. The 2460s are only 23 days from redemption. So that's the one here at the bottom. Let's put it on the top. So we've only got 23 days until all of this LP becomes HEX, and then we'll watch to see what the market makers do. What I did see, and I think I brought it up previously, is somebody put like 5 million Actuator into the vaults for 2490. I don't know what that means. I don't know if there's a plan to mint a bunch of it, but that's what we see. So the 2460 is just about 3 weeks away from redemption. 2490 liquidity continues to grow, and of course these values all go up with the price of HEX. You see 2520 is over 2.3K now. 2970 crossed above the 2K. There's one down here towards the bottom. Right, so you're starting to see a really nice little curve develop, and then the HTT 3000 on the lower curve continues to dominate overall with volume. Well, why? Why? Well, besides the fact that Johnny does streams featuring the HTT 3000s, it also has $75,000 in liquidity. And so when people are buying HEX and the aggregators and the ARBs are looking for more HEX, there's HEX in this pool. And so it gets drawn on. I mean, this is the size, a quarter of the size of the HEX pulse pair. So it's got to get the HEX from somewhere, and so then you see the volume come through, and then it generates reasonable APY. This is a measure that's yearly, but 5.3% is the rate of today. Right? Doesn't mean it was 5%. It just means spread over an entire year, which is actually pretty high for latent type pools, right? So we're continuing to see that with the HTT 3000s. And of course, the HTT 3000 is the closest high liquidity to the entire front end. And so all of these, you might consider the HTT 3000 to be the anchor or the reference point, right? It's, you know, they're all tied to it and across these liquidities, because the pools are really should be viewed as one big network because they're all interconnected. 2460s are paired with 90s, and 90s with 2520s, 2520s with 2550s, etc., all the way up to 3000. So they are interconnected. Even if the volume through those pairs are just reference, it creates ARB paths to be able to keep the keep the curve clean, and you can kind of develop an idea of what the pricing should be. In general, right, you would expect that the ones that are closer to redemption would be closer to 1-to-1. But I think these fractions are just so close, it almost doesn't matter. You know, what's the difference between 0.992 and 1 hour? Very tiny amount when we're talking about such little liquidity. But the liquidity across the shorter maturities continues to improve. You know, probably more importantly, most of the markets continue trading very close to benchmark on the front end. And that suggests, at least while people aren't making moves, that it's becoming efficient. And I think the way to look at this would be not at the current value, But to imagine a future where you multiply all of these numbers by 50, right? I think 50 gets us right to that 10-cent level of HEX, something like that, if I'm not mistaken, because let's see. Yeah, let's do 0.002 times 50. Where does that get us? That gets us to 10 cents. And so if you think about that, we're not talking about $1,000 pools. We're talking about $50,000 pools for 1K, 100,000 for the 2Ks, 250,000 on the 2460, which by the time that happens, 2460 would probably be past redemption for sure. But it's to imagine, what does this market look like at 50x? Does it look like 50x? Meanwhile, short-term opportunities, continue to exist and be reasonable. Let's take a look over here at the 3000s. 3000s had that 21.3% fixed APR. It's still a year and a half out, and their total return is calculated at 30, almost 33% at this point, meaning 33% more HEX if somebody was to swap HEX into 3000s and then hold it until redemption day and redeem 1-to-1. Right, so that continues to be attractive. We did see somebody come in, and let's go look at that. We did see somebody come in and buy that up yesterday, I think, because that discount was looking ridiculous where it was. I'm going to put it in HEX terms. We're looking at the 3000s. Let's put it on the daily. You can see, let's see, on the first, we had a big sell-off, and then on the, was that the first? You have this on daily, okay. On the second, it has a little bit of a buy-up, back, all the way from 0.63 to 6.9. So somebody's been paying attention, and then it's gone from 6.9 up to 7.5, and depending on how you wanted to figure out where you think it should be priced, it probably should be up above 90, 0.92, but it's not. So the discount is there and will remain there until somebody decides to act on it. So people put inventory up into the market, and it's for sale for cheap. Right, so that's what the market makers doing that are doing, and so almost a 25% discount, fixed APR over 20%, fixed ROI 32%, 33%, more than 75K in liquidity. So people who are looking for shorter duration exposure, HTT 3000 continues to stand out. Right now, some people will be like, well, what does all this mean? Why does this matter? I'm not suggesting this is the right thing for you or I, but I'm just recognizing that we have these HTTs that are out here, and I'm looking at the full list, coming down from the 7,000s, 8,000s here in the middle of the pack. There are people who are not interested in staking, and then there are people who are interested in staking. So you essentially can come in here, and if you're one of the ones who's just interested in HEX and you believe in HEX is going to go up, you could take position at all these different maturities just simply by swapping into the HTTs. Now, you don't own a stake when you have that. What you're getting is the fixed return, and all of them are less than 1-to-1 with HEX. You end up with more HEX at the end, but you don't have to stake. Somebody already staked for you and put the inventory on the market. Right, so these could not have existed unless somebody had already paid 1 HEX to put these up on the market. And so, yeah, I mean, these are all here. So for new people coming in that just want exposure to HEX without staking at all, they could take these off the market. And then, but again, for them to exist, they would have had to be HEX. And what it does is it creates more and different price options for the people that are in the market, which leads to more staking of HEX. So yeah, I know it's a little bit of a mind bender, but different ways for different people to look at things. Different ways that people look at things, and they might come in and do that. So we'll see. The long end still offers some pretty good value. Look at that real quick again. So again, over time, liquidity thickens a little bit. I mean, we know that the 777s, let's see where we at with liquidity. They're just about 5K liquidity, so it's kind of low, but you can get away with a $50 swap, $100 swap, that type of thing. But it's 193% fixed return. All right. Yesterday, I did see that the 5,000s were the best premium for a little bit, but now we have the 6,000s. They pop back up as that. And what does that mean? Some people who are interested in amplifying by getting more T-shares, they would go mint 6,000s and then turn around, take the 6,000, swap them for HEX, and do another stake. And that gets them additional T-shares, more exposure. They're still earning on the original stake, and then they earn on the second stake as well, on the daily payouts, and that goes out to day 6,000. So that remains pretty tasty. In addition, you have, let's do total returns. Let me bring this down a little bit, bring the screen up a little bit. I like to use their site because this way everybody can easily go see it for themselves, right? So let's do descending and look at the top ones. All right, so we can see, oh, you know what else I gotta change my filters. We got the 193% on the 777s, but let's clear this, edit this, and we're going to say let's do day 3,000 on all HTTs, 3,000 to 8,000. Done. You see how the 8,000 now popped up as best for selling because of the way I set it up. And so you always have to double check your numbers yourself, but this site gives you some idea of what they're thinking about. They have explainers when you hover over as well. What I was getting to is the 777s, Quattro Sietes, I guess, or yeah, seis, whatever. Quattro 7s, right? 193%. Quattro 6s, 178%. 7900s, 163%. And so while the prices converged of 1-in-1 over time and the HEX price goes up, the idea is you're getting a kind of like a doubling effect. Not that they double in price, but you get the two ways that the HTTs are going up. All right. Even the 7,000s look pretty tasty at 126%. Today, last 24 hours, this may have changed a little bit, but looks like we had around 2 million, almost 2 million HTTs minted. Primarily the 5,000s were minted. Somebody must have taken advantage of that and done an amplification. So we saw that. We saw activity in 2730, 2820, 2610, etc. We have all these different HTTs that have been minted. And it's been pretty broad across the yield curve. And I do expect at some point that we'll see, well, it's all individual. It's when people come to it. But I would expect to see a lot more minting on the 8,000s if we look at our Actuator balances in the vaults. Maybe tells the tale there. So the 8,000s are up to 50 million now, which would infer that somebody thinks a lot of minting is going to take place, which is kind of what we've seen in the past. So it's not like a big surprise when the 7,000s were minting a lot. People put a lot of actuator in there, 108 million retained in there, another 50 million now in the 8,000 that's going up on a daily basis. We're at over 311 million in the vaults at this point. And of course, when people vault that actuator, they're earning HTTs, right? A portion of all of the mints that take place. And so they get a little bit of piece of that. So that's what's happening. And so, yeah, it's going up. Notable balances, we don't see a lot of movement with the 5,000s or the 3,000s at this time, but I would expect, particularly when the 3,000s are no longer in the farm, so we may see that drop off a little bit. But we do continue to see deposits. And then the front end, which is all the way down here, let's do it this way. On the front end, we've seen, I mentioned the 2490s with 5 million. We've been seeing, people come in and start depositing. It looks like 2550 at 157K, 2700, 242K, 2820, 283K. And usually I think what happens with that is people put up their actuator before they go mint. And so some people watch the actuator amounts to see if they're going to mint. That's why I question what's going on with the 2490 and what might happen there. Let's go take a look at the farms. Farms is pretty robust. TVL's bouncing around a little bit. It's up a little bit more because HEX has been pumping this morning. But the TVL, let's see what we got. Got almost 160K HTT 7,000, 100,000, over 103,000. HTT 6,000, 84,000, and TVL HTT 5,000. 61,000 HTT 4,000 and 68,000 HTT 3,000. Oh, that's interesting that's higher, that the 3,000 is higher than the 4,000. That's very interesting. It's probably because of that buy up that happened yesterday. Yeah, the HTT 3000s are coming to redemption in a year and a half, but there's a lot of liquidity. And so the question is, when the farms come down, will people trade out of them or will they just hold in the LP? And that's a big question to watch. Some people undoubtedly will want access to their capital and they may sell. It may be the worst thing they could do. But if you're in the pool and other people sell the pool down by putting more HTT 3000s into the pool and drop the price, that's good for the providers because the providers still get 1-to-1 HEX if they hold the HTT 3000s to redemption. So you may see that happen, but just don't know. Crypto's crazy. People do what the hell they want to do. It's DeFi. This stuff is all immutable. We always see it after the fact. It's not before. And so, yeah. Let's go see what else we want to look at here. We looked at the charts. Ben Sierra has some good information. He got out here last couple of days talking about the July HEX report. And he said that there's been a surge in stakes, but not necessarily a surge in the quantity of stakes. And Ben, of course, has been running HEXBase, or had been when it was doing HEXBase. He's got some other protocols he does. He's only, so he's saying here that 4.6 billion HEX got staked in July. And even as, even if the stake count rose, it was a little bit less. And that HEX is not deflationary because of that. And that kind of makes sense because people aren't dropping more HEX in. That's why I keep saying, for the people who are in the walled garden, it's really small group. It's one of my arguments or thesis behind the Actuator protocol being good for HEX. Looks like, yeah, it's still going, right? So when I started, it was about 13% up on the day. So somebody's doing something. Maybe it is the market maker or not individual people's. This is on the day, so I'm going to bring it down to, let's do something reasonable, 1 hour chart, because it just started about 3 hours ago, right? Boom, boom, boom. Last 6 hours, 25K in buy, 17 in sell on this pair. So again, the difference is only 8K in net buying, to give you kind of the idea of what's happening here because of the way the pools are arranged. And yeah, it's up almost to 20% now on the day. So I like green candles too. It's crazy how that is, Mike, right? Like, it makes me feel good to see green candles. Political speech, free speech, saying the same thing. I like how when HEX goes up, imagine if we get to a place, Wizard, where we're seeing this go up on the regular. There were people who actually, they would buy at the beginning of the week when we were going up in 21 and sell at the end of the week. Not suggesting that's what you do, but I mean, that's how fast it was moving. It was going up. It was worth it to them to do weekly swing trades. And I bring that up because I'm not a trader, but I can understand that most of crypto is wishful thinking and a lot of trading. And so, yeah, this gives people a way to trade HEX and future HEX. I can see, particularly this kind of a market. I use really conservative numbers, 50x, right? And all of a sudden, this is like a whole different thing, and people could be living here, right? They could be making a living off of this if that's what their desire is, and they're good at that. There could be some opportunities that way. And of course, people using the tools like the LPX, other people use V3, and they're providing liquidity. It's pretty interesting. Political free speech is saying the U.S. bond market is approximately 31 trillion. 31 trillion. I would welcome it if HEX's bond market got there. Yeah. We don't need it to be 31 trillion. We'd take it. Probably not going to replace it, but I mean, having a piece of that would be pretty big. There's a lot of information out there about this approach. Meaning bond markets and bond trading. I mean, over 100 years of bond trading data out there to tell you how TradFi has approached this. And there's concepts that are beyond me to understand, like why would I move from one maturity to another to get APR? I mean, I understand that on the surface, but I don't inherently know in my bones when I would make those moves to move to different APRs, when that makes more of a difference to me than different ROIs. We can obviously see that some of these pricings, when they get mispriced, you can see it on the chart where it would be useful, particularly at higher LP. And we'll peruse that real quick before I close out. And Hudson's saying HEX is a criminal. It's a criminal. It is criminal. It needs to be locked up. That's right. Lock up that bad HEX. Put it away. Put that bad HEX away. Let's go look and just see. We'll do another quick update, see what we got on my chart here. Sometimes I think it's easier for me to use this, but let's look at time trades real quick. I am looking at the front end. And now I will again caution, these are low liquidity, right? These ones on the front end. But in concept, right, you can go stake out. Well, now that's only about 22 days, but you can go stake out to 2460 mint and get more 3000s, right? Because 3000s is at a discount, right? Now that's subject to the trading, etc. So we don't always look at these small ones for that, but they can handle $50 type trades, that type of thing. Same thing with 2490s. You can go out all the way to the 3000s, etc. If you wanted to go out even further, by doing short stakes and go in that direction, you could do it. Now, I don't know if that's a good strategy for anybody, but I'm just saying that the way the market is set up, you can move up and down that curve. Another example is the 8000s. You can actually bring them down into all the way to 666s. You can go to 555s and get the same or maybe a little bit more. So you can actually have a stake that's Quattro Cinco with Quattro Cinco T shares earning 8000s, and then turn around but swap the ones that you can mint right away for one much lower down the curve and get them. What's that? So 2,400 and something days earlier, right? Which is almost 7 years earlier. By having the Quattro Cincos instead and being able to swap down, right? So that's an example of somebody doing a time preference type of a thing. And then on the other hand, you have other people like, hey, I really like this sweet ROI. These 777s are way cheap. Let me move some in there. So you could, again, at these numbers, and we're talking about $100, maybe not as appetizing, but when you're talking about 5,000, does that whet somebody's appetite? That's what's fascinating about, I think, about how these could all change and move around. Now, Johnny's been doing the lock it up, doing the HEX lock it up, because we have the highest big liquidity, which is the 77K for the 3000s. The HTTs are 0.75. So you can actually go stake out to day 3000, mint the HTTs and get more 8000s, right? Or get more, 777s or whatever. And so again, while we might not be traders, I think the idea is that somebody says, well, listen, those 666s and 777s are too cheap. So I'm going to make a play on this. I think the price is going to come back. It's going to be in demand. I swap into the lower priced one, and then when the ratio corrects itself, they go back the other direction. Kind of like what the EHEX guys do with the PHEX, right? So going back and forth with those ratios to get the most units, because they're after those units. Now, based on what we learned as Hexicans, when you make mistakes doing this stuff, you get chopped up. And so the safest bet is buy and hold, right? Another great bet is, buy, stake, and hold. And you have that. But I think what this market is acknowledging is that people like to trade. And, people like to do a lot of things, like use credit cards when they probably shouldn't have debt. So it's not making a statement about what you're allowed to do. It's just that this stuff exists. People can do it. And there are some smart people that'll have good opportunities. There's also opportunities for people, if they need to get short-term liquidity or access to liquidity, they can, through this methodology. So if we go look at HEX right here, see what's going on. So down a little bit on this 1 hour, but 18% pump on the morning. So not bad. Not bad at all. All right, before I wrap, one last check. See if we got comments or questions. Nothing. I don't see nothing in here that I need to answer, my guys. And so with that, let me go ahead and close out, and we'll come back again with another bond market update in the future. So despite the pullback on the old HEX, we're seeing the infrastructures continue to move in one direction. New liquidity is arriving. We're seeing the vault balances go up. We showed you that. HTTs continue to be minted. The front end continues to mature. The long end continues to provide compelling value and opportunities. Prices are going to fluctuate. We know that. So remember, dips in the game, volatility is in the game. It's the price you pay. Meanwhile, all this infrastructure, it's compounding. It is compounding. And so every new node and person who joins into the bond market, providing liquidity or even strengthening, that this bond market, it's all built on HEX. You have to have HEX in the first place. And so that's the idea. That's the idea. All right. If you're enjoying these kinds of updates, let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with the stream with people. Every day we watch this market, it's going kind of crazy. It'd be nice to see it go way, way up. And of course, that means getting that information out to people. All right. With that, you guys have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Charts flaming hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart. Win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it.
Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.